Charlie Kirk shooting. Let me ask you a question. Did Candace Owens hijack the narrative? Well, we're going to talk about all that and more right here on Charlie Crime Buster. It's what some people are calling, well, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crime Buster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Charlie Crime Buster. Today we're continuing our series about the Charlie Kirk shooting. This is number 7 in the series. I could not believe that we have been able to talk about that terrible, terrible day in such terms that we've been delivering to you on this podcast. In fact, it's pretty incredible when you really think about it. Just when you think you've heard it all, then you hear something else. We're going to talk all about that on today's program. So thank you for joining us with the Charlie Crime Buster Crime Train. We appreciate you. If you're a first-time listener or you're a seasoned listener, do me a big favor, will you? Just reach over there and hit that like button, and then if you would hit that subscribe button. Helps us get the word out to more people. Thank you so much for those of you who reach out to us. You can reach out with a shout-out by emailing me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, PeacemakerNetwork.com.
The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
All right, let's get right into today's program. You know, we have been talking for some time now about Candace Owen and some of the wild speculative claims that she has made about Charlie Kirk's shooting. It is amazing to me that these rants can gather so much attention. And so while I thought we pretty well had this covered, we're going to move on to other things, she comes up with something else. And I feel I have an obligation to stand up on Charlie Crime Buster, as we do, regarding the truth about crime. That when you're really crime busters, like those of you who follow this program, you don't run down every little rabbit hole. You don't make speculative boast about this happening and that happening. You always follow the evidence. You look at every rock, of course, and you turn it over and you look under there, but if there's nothing there, you move on. You don't try to bait people with these speculative ideas about things that really did not happen. So today, we're just going to take some time and we're going to go over some of the more serious implications that Candace has made. And hopefully, maybe this will be our 7th one, might be our final podcast regarding this. One of the first things that we see that she did try to share on her platform is she indicated that Charlie Kirk predicted his own death. She actually claims that about 24 hours before the shooting that Kirk told multiple people something like, well, I think they're going to kill me. She, of course, is sharing this to say that Charlie himself sensed a threat and that the shooting was not just some random gunman, but there was something else involved. That's what she's going for, something else involved. Well, the answer is simply this, friend. Charlie Kirk has not publicly made any predictions regarding his death. Now, any claims about him predicting his death may come from misinterpretations or maybe satire. You see, Charlie is known for his political commentary and activism rather than personal prophecies. You just don't hear things like this. In fact, Candace talked about a dream that she had when Charlie came to her in a dream. You don't hear Charlie getting up and talking about dreams and speculation. Speculation about his death is often unfounded. It's not based on credible sources. Now, there may have been a tweet back in 2014 where he said, well, you know, something off the cuff, and he certainly realized that there was danger in what he was doing. That's why he had security with him. And he knew that there was always that possibility. But just to say that he predicted that he was going to be shot right in this particular time or that particular place, my friend, it is just not founded. It is unfounded. There's no truth there whatsoever. And this, by the way, goes right along with the fact that we mentioned last week that somebody had said that there was a doctor there at the hospital that reached into his pocket and found a note that said, "Trust no one." It's the same type of stuff that's just made up and is not true, and it's spouted on the internet. However, when someone as influential as Candace Owen begins to spout this kind of stuff, then it really gets legs and it begins to grow and it begins to move, and this person shares it and that person shares it, and the bots get involved and the bots share this and share that. Then China gets involved and Russia and Iran, who wants to always have this uproar in American culture. And so it's easily to see how these things will really develop and get on steroids and get out there that has no truth to it. Now, there's another theory that she is putting out there that I think we need to talk about. And when I say throwing out there, you know what I mean as you follow me on today's podcast. Candace Owen does allege that Kirk was under immense pressure from Jewish Israeli donors, and that he was moving away from his unquestioned pro-Israel positions. She is definitely implying that this could have played a role in his death. She even reported that Bill Ackman had an intervention with Kirk, and that Kirk had told her, Candace, that he had lost a major donor for not counseling Tucker Carlson at one of his events. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that Charlie Kirk would not allow donors to push him around. He was a man of conviction. He wouldn't bend or bow to them. But that doesn't mean that because he wouldn't, that suddenly they decided to take him out. And I talked about this on one of the past podcasts. Can you imagine why in the world would Israel ever risk alienating the United States by coming on the United States and doing an assassination on the United States soil? Even if they use straw people, people that were not connected to them to make that happen, they have to know that with the United States intelligence agencies, we would have tracked that down. There is no truth at all that Israel had anything to do with the shooting of Charlie Kirk. In fact, Israel was moved by Charlie Kirk. Israel said great things about Charlie Kirk. And even though he may not have supported everything that Israel was doing, and that doesn't mean that he wasn't a supporter of Israel. In fact, I know that he was. The people around him know that he was. Those who knew him best knew that he had a biblical conviction, and that biblical conviction says that we are to be a friend to Israel. Israel are God's chosen people, according to the Bible. And by the way, Bill Ackman, he denies this story. He's also backed up by Charlie's producer. They did have a meeting, and they did talk about how to use other young people in the movement across America of young conservatives that get involved in promoting conservatism. He did talk to him about that. They were planning on talking more about that. They were going to have Zoom meetings and this sort of thing. They were having all kinds of conferences and getting these young people ready to take up the cause that Charlie was taking up on campuses. It was as though they were getting into that place where they could compound his influence by using surrogates of other young people on college campuses. That was what they talked about. And not only does he deny this, but Bill Ackman's story is backed up by Charlie's producer. And the people, listen to this, the people that always traveled with Charlie and were with him in these such interactions. He did not push or intervene with Charlie Kirk. She just throws all this out on the wall and hopes that something will stick. But she's very smart, very intelligent. She is a manipulator by sure force. Because, even after that, when she saw that this wasn't getting any strength, any traction, she throws out a disclaimer. After she implied, no doubt she implied that Israel was behind this, she then says, well, I in no way said that Israel was implicit in the shooting. Sure you didn't. It's almost like that old question. Remember that old question that men used to ask other men? Are you still beating your wife? How do you answer that? If you say no, that means you were. If you say yes, it means you are. This is a trick. And just like she has, these implications are nothing but tricks for clicks. Did you hear that? Tricks for clicks. As in most of her wild theories. Now, to show you how crazy and wild it is, listen to this. After the Israel claim did not seem to get much traction, you can't make this up, Owen then tweeted that an Egyptian Air Force plane, tail number SU-BTT, flew out of Utah on the day of Charlie Kirk's shooting and implied that it was tied to a quote-unquote military operation rather than a lone shooter incident. She said the plane's first trip to the United States, well, that was back in July. It was to an Army base in Nebraska, and that a quote-unquote decision to murder Charlie Kirk was made around July the 18th, and that a military meeting with foreign leaders took place on July the 20th on U.S. soil. And I can back this up because on X, here's what she wrote. She wrote on September the 10th, quote, I'm quoting, on September the 10th, after Charlie's assassination, an Egyptian Air Force plane flew out of Utah, tail number SU-BTT. Tyler Robinson must have had some powerful friends. Now, this idea of an Egyptian plane flying out of the place there where he was killed, this does not hold water because the timeline's incorrect. She said it flew out right at the time, right after the shooting, but that plane did depart from that airport at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. on the day of the shooting. It had nothing to do with the shooting whatsoever. Not the way that she was pushing this on her wild theories. Now, can you see what I see here? First of all, she writes and says, well, Israel had something to do with Charlie's death. That's what she implies. And oops, no, I did not mean that. But what I do mean is that now it was Egypt. It's Egypt. It's Egypt, and this plane that was flying around that could be tracked somehow to Egypt had something to do with Charlie's death. Do you see what I mean when I say it's like she's just throwing anything and everything she can possibly throw at the wall concerning Kirk's shooting? And she's just hoping that something will stick. I just wish that she would follow real evidence. I just wish she would follow these things that are really happening. And my friend, the plot thickens. That's right. The plot thickens. As though you think it could not get any crazier, there are some other crazy things to follow. I'm going to share that in just a minute, but speaking of crazy things, it's now time for me to share with you Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, there's a Florida man. Yep, a Florida man. I hate to say Florida man, but that's what it is. A Florida man was accused of fleeing a hit-and-run crash in Palm Beach County. And here is where it gets crazy. Now, according to a probable cause affidavit from the North Palm Beach Police Department, officers arrested David Michael Scarlett, 34 years of age, of North Palm Beach. Arrested him late on October the 19th after responding to his home following a crash in a place nearby there, a place called Palm Beach Gardens. Now, during that transport, he did some crazy things. He banged his head against the rear door window of the police cruiser. He refused to answer questions, and police wrote that he boasted he didn't have to cooperate. And here it is. He didn't have to cooperate because he worked for the President of the United States. And then he taunted officers. Said, take these handcuffs off so I can wipe the floor with you. And he threatened them that if he didn't release him, they would be unemployed. Why? Because, yep, he works for the President of the United States. Well, police said the incident began when the officers were called to a hit-and-run involving a vehicle registered to him. When officers arrived at his residence there on Huckleberry Lane, they found that this crazy crook, Scarlett, was sitting on his porch with fresh abrasions on his hands, legs, and knees, and had a noticeable, surprise, 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 odor of alcohol. When they asked about his car, well, he became combative, used racial slurs, and said some pretty nasty things while he was sitting there smoking a cigarette. He then stood up, pointed the cigarette inches from the officer's face, and they had to subdue him to prevent from being burned. And when he was handcuffed, he continued his threats, said he would beat the officer up and his family, calling the police pigs. And his disturbance, of course, disturbed nearby residents, according to the report. Well, he was taken into custody, resisting arrest without violence, and then he demanded to speak with a supervisor. And when the sergeant responded, well, the suspect, this old crazy crook, he screamed racial slurs at the sergeant, attempting to spit through his cell floor. And, of course, that brought additional charges. So this crazy guy who does a hit and run and then thinks he can get out of it by simply telling the popo, well, I work for the President of the United States. By the way, my friend, let me just mention this. When he was arrested, he was shirtless, wearing black short boxers and socks at the time of the arrest. Now, I want to ask you, think about this. I just kind of doubt that his dress there in boxers, socks, black shorts, I don't think it would meet Mar-a-Lago standards down there. Do you? No. Crazy crook thought he could get out of a hit and run by simply saying he worked for the President of the United States is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Now, speaking of crazy, I already have told you that you tried to imply Israel was involved in the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Now, she said, no, I did not directly say Israel did it, but then it's Egypt. Egypt, you see, they had this plane out there, and it was a military operation, and there was wild speculation that was blown out of the water by the timetable of that plane. And so now, well, yep, it gets crazier. Yep, it gets crazier, because now not only is she implying that Israel had something to do with the shooting, and then Egypt had something to do with the shooting. But guess what? I bet you've already guessed it. It's now time to imply that the United States of America and Donald Trump had something to do with his death. Candace Owens has shockingly now blamed Donald Trump for Charlie Kirk's assassination. At least that's what she's implying. Now, she was once a supporter of Republican President Donald J. Trump, but now she's since turned on Trump and his administration, while fueling some wild conspiracy theories about Kirk's murder. She's now saying it was an inside job. It was during her Wednesday, October the 22nd, book club meeting. That's where Owens accused Trump and his staffers of orchestrating Kirk's death. And here it is, quote, "We just know that he was truly betrayed in one of the most egregious ways that I think I have ever seen. It has made me lose faith in politics. It has made me fully lose faith in Trump," she declared. And then she noted that Kirk gave so much of his life to Trump and to politics, and they were just like, nope, that's it. He serves us or he doesn't serve us. We want to move on. So here's a holiday. And then she adds, listen to this, I'm quoting, "What is it with them giving them a holiday after they kill them?" Did you hear that? She said now they're giving Charlie Kirk a holiday after they killed him. She said, what is it with them giving them a holiday after they kill them? And she goes on and double downs and says, I meant every word. The feds are implicated. When the feds are implicated, they always give people a holiday. She insisted that. You see what I'm saying? She's always skirting around, throwing this stuff on the wall, trying to get more clicks, trying to get more followers, trying to cause more controversy. Now, it even gets worse, my friend. you may have already read wild speculation that Owen has now implied Erica, Charlie's wife, had something to do with his killing. Well, in fact, I've got to be open with you on this. I do not see that she really implied that Erica had anything to do with his murder, with his death. However, there is implication in her rants that Erica may be under the influence of donors, and that Erica is not open to a full investigation into her husband's death. She's very careful how she walks around this accusation. She's very careful how she's saying it, but the implication is there. Poor Erica. She's so bound up in grief, she can't see the real truth. She can't see that the feds are lying. She can't see that the feds are covering it up. She can't see that there's much more here than what happened. She can't see that Israel had something to do with it. Egypt had something to do with it. Donald Trump had something to do with it. The United States had something to do with it. There's this big conspiracy out there. Something is not adding up. That's what she keeps saying and saying and saying. And now she's saying that Erica, she even says, you'd think that his wife would want to know the full story, that she would want this to continue to be investigated. And so by the way she's framing all of this in her podcast, she's basically saying that Erica may not have anything to do with the murder, but she's certainly having something to do with the cover-up because she's not demanding more information. Now, I don't know about you, but in my mind, I can't help but think that all of this speculation may have something to do with the fact that Candace Owen, who claims to be such a close friend of Charlie Kirk, yet she was not invited to speak or even to be a part of Charlie's memorial service. And based on the unresponsible speculative rants of Candace Owen, I can easily see why Erica and Turning Point USA would want to distance themselves from Candace Owens. I believe she's simply gone off the rails in this rants. Now, to really understand Candace, I think you have to go back to the fact that she began her journey into the click world on social platform by simply changing her political stance. She was a leftist. She was on the far left. But then she realized somehow, some way, that if she moved her political stance to the right, well, she had all kinds of attention. She had all kinds of people that were listening to her. And suddenly she becomes a celebrity in the conservative movement. And I might add that move also not only made her a celebrity in the conservative movement, it also made her very rich at the same time. I'm talking rich in millions of dollars. You see, she's learned that controversy earns her followers, and followers earns her money. So these outrageous rants about Charlie Kirk feeding into this her own conspiracy world that she lives in, and I don't know, she may have even talked herself into believing her own rants. Maybe she believes them even though they're not verifiable. Even though they are very far from the truth, she may be living in that world. Now for the moment, Candace has stepped away from her podcast and she's on a vacation of some sort. Just saw a picture of her holding a fish. Hey, I have a suggestion. Maybe she should spend a little more time fishing for real fish instead of fishing for conspiracies. Particularly unfounded claims without credible verification. Now, the sad part of this to me is that Candace Owen, I believe that she was really crushed. I believe she was crushed that she herself was not chosen to take over Charlie's organization, Turning Point USA. I believe in her mind, she thought, well, Charlie is a champion out there, and I'm on the same level as Charlie, so they should certainly look to me to take over this organization. Now, she would probably say, if you asked her about that, oh, I don't want to do that. I didn't want to do it. Don't have anything to do with it. Got my own stuff. But I believe she was additionally really crushed when not only was she not chosen to be his successor, the person who would succeed him, I believe she was additionally crushed that she was not invited to speak or even to be a part of the memorial service. So what? She hijacks the story. she takes this narrative. You're not going to let me be a part of the inside clique? Well, I'm going to investigate this thing up one side and down the other. I'm going to turn this story on its head. I'm going to ride the clicks that I get. I want to muddle up the real investigation until the alleged gunman who simply climbed upon a roof and with one shot took out Charlie Kirk. Now, lots of people don't want to believe that when people they love get killed, it could be that simple. They say there has to be more to it. But in this case, I'm afraid, my friend, you're going to find that that's exactly what happened. Tyler was not bankrolled by Israel, Egypt, or the United States. I do not even believe that the far left hired him to do the job. I believe his motive was that he felt that Kirk was spreading hate because Kirk had beliefs and convictions that the lifestyle that Tyler and his trans friend were living was wrong. And he spoke out about this lifestyle just about everywhere he went. I believe that Tyler was offended, and he took out his offense by killing Charlie Kirk. It's just that simple. And yet, Candace is out there throwing all these things, causing this uproar out on her platforms, and causing more and more people to get involved in this. It's just amazing to me how quickly people believe something they see on the internet. Now, this might be our last podcast on this series. This is number 7 in the series. Or maybe not. When Candace comes back from vacation, I just can't imagine anything else she could wildly speculate about. She's already speculated about the fact that Israel, Egypt was involved, the United States was involved, the feds are involved. There was a guy under the stage, and there was a little trap door, and he came up and shot him, That she says that Tyler wasn't there. He was at the Dairy Queen when this happened. And he could not be at that Dairy Queen so quickly if he was the shooter. Yet at the same time, she comes back and says there was a lady who helped him get away. She constantly contradicts herself in these stories. So I just don't know. I believe this will probably be our last podcast on this subject because I don't know anything else she could come up with except, maybe next week. Maybe next week she'll try to convince her 1 million followers that a spaceship from Mars landed in Utah and little green men climbed out under the stage and they peeked up and shot Charlie Kirk. And then they were zapped into time travel in a fast getaway to Mars. Well, that might have just as much chance of being true as some of the wild rants we've already heard. Well, that's it for today. Until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert for the life you save. It may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.